And we are live. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? I am back after a close to 3 week hiatus. Or maybe a 3 week hiatus, I don't remember. But yes, I am here, and I am here to talk about week 8. I know we're already, I am a few days behind this, but let's get this straight ahead. This past weekend, let's get this started. This past weekend overall, it was a very interesting set of games, and it's kind of crazy how everything can change in the UFL within like a few weeks span. One team could be on the top, and then eventually they fizzle down back to the bottom four, or maybe some teams that were close to be eliminated, now they are officially back in the playoff race, and we are here to talk about that. Starting with Friday's game, we had Dallas's last home game of the season between I guess the Orlando Storm, and honestly, this game, I mean, for being Dallas's last home game, this was at a quote unquote neutral site location, being at the Fort Hood military base. And honestly, at least I like the vibe and the energy. At least at that when I was watching the game, I felt like the vibe was there. I'm not sure. Obviously, this was a smaller stadium, and attendance was kind of meh. But I mean, you get what you get for being like at a like kind of close to like a 2 to 2.5 hour drive from Dallas. So there it is. But I feel like overall it was a very fun game to watch. But Dallas, I have mentioned this before, but I think it's finally in the settle, and that is Dallas's downfall. Overall for the last few years, the last few years has been an interesting one for them because, of course, they did win the XFL championship back in 2023, but after that, it's been like nothing short of a stalemate. 2024, they lose 6 straight games before winning one against the Memphis Showboats, and even though Dallas had opportunities to win at least a couple out of those games, and then the second half of the season, Dallas had a 3-2 record in the second half of 2024, which is like okay, great, but where did the result deliver? To nowhere. Then 2025, Dallas kind of had a bit more expectations, kind of a bit of like, I guess, kind of a bit of a sneaky team type deal. I mean, they improved the record to 5-5, but again, their whole thing is that they choke in the most crucial games they needed, like last year versus Michigan, and I think they choke one versus DC in 2025 as well, and then now here we're in 2026, which it seemed like, it seemed like Dallas was ready to make a run. It kind of feel like the narratives were finally going down, but then they lost their game versus Columbus, and then they lost 4 straight since then to teams like DC, the Orlando Storm, the Birmingham Stallions, and the Louisville Kings as well. And I'll talk about them in a short bit. But Dallas is this really is a very disappointing season. Like this spot after starting off hot, and then Austin Reed, he went from being like a potential MVP candidate, and now, he's still doing okay, but it's still very insane that like you would think at the 3-0 start you would expect the Dallas Renegades to be a playoff team at that point, but it's crazy how everything can change in the UFL within a few weeks, especially with the short schedule to give. And if this was 3-5 and it was a 17 game schedule like we saw with the NFL, then at least you could say Dallas still has hope. But right now, not really. It's kind of it's just been the theme, and I'll probably explore more of that in the 2020. Maybe if I talk about the Dallas Renegades in a separate video themselves, but as of right now, Dallas. But meanwhile, the Orlando Storm, congratulations. You are the first team to make it out of the playoff to make it into the playoffs to extend your football season in June. That's right, the Orlando Storm. They had a playoff scenario, and that was win and in, and they did, and they did. Jack Plummer put up a very dominant performance against the Renegades defense. I mean, we're pretty much seeing who's going to be the MVP this year. I might say Anthony Beck definitely. It's probably Beck and someone else. Definitely are up in the running for the Coach of the Year nomination. For the Coach of the Year award this year. I mean, this team. I mean, when going to the season of the Orlando Storm, I felt like this team was kind of a mystery. I felt like at least with Beck as coach, I could expect this team to be a playoff team this year. But just given the new pieces, involving a new team, it's just kind of hard to. It was kind of hard for me to gauge this team. But congratulations to Orlando Storm, and to making the being the first team to make the playoffs. And they have a shot to get the number one seed this weekend as well. But I'll explain that later. Starting with game 2, we had the DC Defenders taking on the Louisville Kings. And the DC Defenders got swept. Let's start with that. The DC Defenders got swept by the Louisville Kings. And honestly, it is getting very concerning, especially now. It's probably even more concerning since now Jordan Teamu is officially out for the rest of the season. So even if they do clinch a playoff spot, they're going to be going to the playoffs without him, and that is that's a very crucial piece you have. And I mean, I know they put in Sanders for the entire game last on Saturday based on how I saw it, and this was. And DC, all you had to do was beat the Kings, and you guys were in. But they failed to do. They failed to do that, and now here they are. There's now like a small fear or a small chance like they might not even make the postseason this year, and that is something to look into now. Going to week 9, especially your final 2 games are the Orlando Storm, who are probably trying to clinch the number 1 spot, who's trying to clinch the 1 seed in the playoffs at the moment. So, who are you guys going to roll with this week? Are you guys going to roll with Sanders, or are you guys going to roll with Bean? Because, I mean, you guys made that trade for Jason Bean with Mike DeLelio a few weeks ago, so I feel like there is a chance Bean could do some magic, especially since he has a similar style with Jordan Teamu. I feel like I feel like it could work. I mean, he does have the leg room, but I think it's just more of a matter of whether he can be consistent in terms of the passing game. Because one pass, you see him as an MVP, he looks like he's about to be a dangerous man in the league, but then sometime later you see another pass, he's just like, why would you throw that? Especially we saw it with week 1 with the Stallions. So I mean, we shall see what Shannon Harris is going to do. It is overall a big mystery. But meanwhile, the Louisville Kings, they really snuck up into the playoff rankings, because at first it seemed like this might be another down year. Might be a down year for the Louisville Kings after starting off 0-3, especially that devastating loss in week 3 after losing via penalty, because the Kings did another penalty, hence that would make it an automatic score. I mean, again, the Kings, they probably would be a 6-2 team if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot with Birmingham week 1, and likely and also if it wasn't for that overtime ending, they likely would be 6-2 and most likely in the playoffs as well as one of the top 4 teams. But they are 4-1 since that 0-3 start. They have looked a lot better. They won, versus the Gamblers in week 4. They beat Dallas in week 5. I know they lost to the Battlehawks week 6. and then they of course won their last 2 games versus the DC Defenders, and now they have an opportunity to to at least keep up with Birmingham right now for the playoff race, since Birmingham has the head-to-head tiebreaker for the time being. But the Kings are honestly looking like a very dangerous team under and of course you have Chandler Rogers, who's been doing a pretty solid job. Last week, this past weekend, it was pretty sloppy, but I think Chandler Rogers did improve towards that second half of the game. I think like everyone else did, but yeah, But now, can the Louisville Kings? This is pretty much going to be a two-horse race, literally, with the Kings and the Stallions probably fighting for that last playoff spot. But who knows? There is maybe a small chance both the Kings and the Defenders can actually, the Kings and the Stallions could actually get into the last playoff spot. But that is going to be a very tight race towards the end of these last 2 weeks. Then game 3, we got the Battlehawks and the Gamblers. Talk about an upset. Battlehawks again. They needed to win to go to the playoffs, and they choked it. I mean, as much as I know the last like couple minutes of the game, that last like few minutes of the game where Dean Blandino kind of made some very questionable calls. Oh yeah, actually before I continue, during that DC game, I know there was a very questionable call as well for the Defenders, which could have gotten them maybe another small chance at life to win that game, but. Yeah, I know there were some questionable calls with Dean Blandino this past weekend, especially also with the Battlehawks Houston game. But at the same time, Luis Perez, he was a turnover machine for that game. I know the O line was also struggling that game as well, but yeah, you guys, St. Louis, you guys kind of blew it right there at the last during the first half. That was it. Like that first half was pretty much all the Houston Gamblers all had to do was score was 23 to points, and although like St. Louis did eventually try to slowly come back in that race, yeah, and then they took away and then they try to spike the ball at the very last second of the game, but they failed to manage their time correctly. So now St. Louis is at 5-3. I mean, they have a shot at the playoff spot this week, but I'll get to that in a moment. Houston 3-5. They're still technically alive in the playoff race at a 3-5 record, and they obviously are going to have a tough road ahead of them. That head-to-head tiebreaker versus the Birmingham Stallions is coming very beneficial at the time being, but they do lose this weekend to the. If they do lose this weekend, I think that's probably wraps for them. I believe that's wraps for the. I think the Gamblers lose this weekend. I think that's wraps for them, but I think that's really going to depend how the rest of the other 3 games are going to go this weekend as well. But up next, we got the final game of the weekend. We got Columbus Aviators and the Birmingham Stallions. I couldn't really see all the entire game on Sunday, but I seen some of it. Birmingham got the win, put up a very dominant defensive performance against the Aviators, and again, the DTR 3-1 record right now. Ever since he got traded after week 4, he's been a very bright spot to this team. The offense has been looked a lot more better, and this weekend, I feel like we need our offense to improve this weekend as well. Columbus put up a pretty dominant defensive performance, and if it wasn't for that turnover for the Stallions, this game likely would be a 1-point game, hypothetically so, for the Stallions. Like, Stallions win at 7-6, but they do win at 14-3. They do win at 14-3 though, so good win for the Stallions. Now they face the Columbus Aviators once again next week on Saturday. So we'll see how they would play, and but then Stallions again, another team can clinch the playoffs for them, and we shall see how that goes. But yeah, Columbus though, despite being 2-6, they are still technically alive for a playoff spot. but it is kind of weird. But I guess the way to do it is kind of weird. It kind of reminds me like the USFL back in 2023 when the the Memphis Showboats even though they were like virtually eliminated, but they weren't mathematically eliminated from the playoff spot for the second playoff spot, because I know all they had to do was like, because I think if I remember they had to beat Birmingham, but like they had to blow out Birmingham, and I think Houston would have to like lose. I think Houston would have had to win by like a certain amount of points as well, to kind of get Memphis like the tiebreaker for I guess point differential, but it kind of felt like a very long shot for the Showboats. But yeah, for Columbus, they're kind of in that weird position where they can technically make the postseason at 4-6. I mean, they haven't played the Kings yet, so and they do play the Birmingham one more. They do play Birmingham one more time this season, so they could technically get the probably head-to-head tiebreaker, maybe from Birmingham and Louisville if they both lose out their games. And then of course, Houston would have to Houston would probably would have to lose out maybe, or go 3-7. Or I guess go 4-6. Would have to lose St. Louis this weekend, but they would have to beat Birmingham. But it's weirdly complicated for them. But yeah, that's my week 8 recap. But let's get a couple news things out of the way, starting with so St. Louis, they're in their game this weekend. They had an injury to their starting tight end, and they only had one tight end active in their roster, or at least in the depth chart this weekend. But with that, they obviously put Neville on IR, but now they did sign someone, and ladies and gentlemen, Sal Cannella is back in the UFL once again. This time he will be wearing the St. Louis blue. He got waived by the Cleveland Browns, I think, like not that long ago, honestly, and such perfect time for him. I mean, he gets an opportunity to play and try to be in the playoffs, but he's going back with his former teammate in with his teammate in Luis Perez once again. So I mean, that's a great option for him, great receiving option for Luis Perez. So there is that familiarity right there. It's just now with Sal Cannella. I mean, Sal Cannella has a few days of practice, of course, and then after that they're gonna fly to Houston, or go to the road to Houston this weekend to get them to the playoffs this week. So that is and something, and then some other recent news as well. We got other recent news as well. The Columbus Aviators are going to make a change of quarterback. Jalen McClendon will not be the starting quarterback this week. It will be former Stallions quarterback Jalen Morton. He has been the Stallions, like I think, like usually he was like the Stallions like third string or backup He's been the backup / third string quarterback for the Stallions for a good while, and then he played in the indoor. I know he played in arena or indoor football league, and then after that, I think he signed with I think if I remember, I think he signed back with the Stallions back in 25. I could be wrong about that, but he's been on the active roster for the Aviators for ever since the new teams got announced, and he was part of the active QBs as well. So that we shall see how he does, and I'm excited for him, even though he's going to go against his former team. But I'm still excited to see what he can do this weekend. So that's so can't wait. But yeah, those are kind of like the more major news right now. I mean, currently we are seeing teams currently telling them to renew their season tickets for 2027. So there's been that announcement right now. Uh, so we'll can't wait to see. I will say this: I felt like this weekend also Mike Repoli. We gotta kind of discuss what your comment about the Stallions, about their attendance. I mean, I get it. You've been doing a lot more involved than I've seen with the UFL for the last 2 seasons from, like, Dwayne and Danny, but Dude, you cannot be like commenting about like kind of joking about the Stallions' attendance, man. It's like it just looks pretty bad as an at least like looks pretty bad if you want the Stallions to succeed. I mean, I if that's the wave we're going with, but I mean, Stallions do have one more home game this week, and that will be against the Houston Gamblers. So Birmingham Stallions Nation, hope you guys show up next week for Stallions' last home game of the season. Um, now, now, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. There's like, I mean, USFL. I mean, UFL announced their tiebreakers earlier today, but we but we shall see. But yeah, this is. But I think that's pretty much it based on how I know. Obviously there's probably going to be the other conversation about Houston with their attendance, like we have in this conversation before, which I actually have been wanting to talk about. You know what? Let me talk about this before I get straight to my UFL predictions for Week 9. Uh, and that's about Houston. Honestly, it kind of feels like throughout the season, I really think how much is it on ownership and how much is it like really just out of control. Because let's start with the XFL in 2020. Houston, of course, the Roughnecks played at TDCU, but of course, COVID season get canceled. Then the 2022 USFL season happened, and every team, including the Houston Gamblers, had to play in Birmingham for all those 10 games. And then 2023, the Gamblers, and pretty much this is the rest of the time the Gamblers. Like the Gamblers moved from Birmingham, then they had that hub in Memphis to share the stadium with. So I feel like they haven't really gone. I just feel like most of the time they haven't really able to establish a fan base. Especially with the constant moving of stadiums each year. I feel like because and especially with the rebrand, and then 2024, the Houston then they went from the Gamblers to the Roughnecks, and then of course with the remodeling of TDCU Stadium, they had to play that year at Rice Stadium, which that makes sense. I feel like that was just out of their control. I mean there was renovations. It made sense on why. Then they moved back to TDCU in 2025, which is like this is like their fourth location playing, and it seemed like okay, this is it. The Houston Roughnecks are going to play at TDCU. This is going to be good. I mean, attendance was kind of eh, but at the same time, also, can you really blame the Roughnecks community after, like the XFL team was disbanded pretty much, and you got the pretty much the Gamblers instead that got rebranded to the Roughnecks instead? I mean, I kind of don't blame them, seeing especially the outperformance from CJ Johnson and now Kevin Sumlin once again. And now in 2026, they're now in a new stadium for the fifth season in a row, or I guess hosting their home games for the fifth season at a different place in Shell Energy, which it's kind of like how much of it can you really blame it on the Houston fan base? How much can you really blame the Houston fan base for this? Because I feel like it's just a lot of it just becomes out of their control at this point, and it's like next year, are they gonna go play at NRG Stadium? Or are they gonna play at TDCU once again? Are they gonna play somewhere else? Who knows? Because I feel like I know this has been like the controversial topic or been like the hot button issue whether or not should the Houston Gamblers be moved to another city. Because I mean you could also make the pros of it because like well look at Memphis, their attendance was pretty bad the last couple seasons in the UFL, but now since they are now rebranded to the Louisville Kings, I mean the attendance has been very popular since. Which I mean I do agree, I do see the upside of it. You get a brand new fan base, a brand new market that you are going to promote. I mean, the Kings fan base have been showing up to these games. I mean, I've seen um, double digit thousand attendance numbers so far as we've seen. And then Columbus, same thing too. They've been doing pretty solid for attendance for a first season. So I mean that is something to be excited for. But now can the Houston but but I feel like I feel like this is gonna be a weird year. I feel like next offseason is gonna be weird, especially for some of the teams that are still around, like Birmingham, like Houston. Since they've been in the conversations of relocations or rebranding now. So I mean, no one really talks about it with Dallas. I mean, everyone likes Dallas because of course, like the UFL office is in Arlington. So I mean, it makes sense of why they will keep them. But this is and I feel like they've been a no-name brand. So I feel like if anything, I would give Houston maybe one more season if they play at Shell Energy. So at least it's kind of like you have this consistency involved. You have this like, okay, this team is going to play at Shell Energy. Let's get the attendance up. Let's get the people hype about the Gamblers next year. I mean, their last home game on this weekend, they are going to give out 5,000. They're going to give out uh, Jim Kelly bobbleheads. Sorry, Jim Kelly bobbleheads this weekend for the first 5,000 people that show up to Shell Energy. So I mean that's something to good. I mean you at least keep them with the history. I mean you have I mean you have like at least some historic context with it. I mean that should be good. I mean hopefully that works. I feel like at least I want to at least keep some consistency. I think that's probably what it is. If the Gamblers at least go stay at Shell Energy for one more year and the attendance is still pretty shoddy, then I would probably consider the rebranding or moving them to a brand new team. But hey, that's just my opinion. At the end of the day, it is what it is. Now let's finally get to UFL prediction time, starting with Friday night football. Give me a second. Um, I know the matchups, but I just don't remember. Okay, so starting with Friday Night Football, we got the DC Defenders traveling to the Orlando Storm for their final home game of the season. And the Orlando Storm, uh, despite clinching a playoff spot, they are still going to be fighting for the number one seed. So Orlando can clinch the number one seed this weekend with a win and a St. Louis loss. So they so so Orlando would have the best overall rec. So Orlando gets number one seed by having the best overall record. Uh, and you have the DC Defenders who are now down Jordan Teyamu, and we're gonna go. And I'm not sure they announced starting quarterback or they're gonna go roll with Sanders this Friday. So that is gonna be time. That's gonna be time will tell. But DC, they have a shot for the playoffs. And their playoff road is pretty simple. Win and in, or Birmingham loses. That's pretty much their playoff scenario right now. Win or Birmingham loss. And it's I mean or I feel like in some way I could definitely see the defenders like putting up a better game than we have seen than we have seen the defenders been doing the last 2 weeks, especially going against the Louisville Kings. And I mean the defenders did better last week, but you're going to Orlando. I felt like if this game was in DC, I probably would have sniffed the upset here, maybe DC stays alive in the will be alive in the playoff race. But this is a tough game to this. I feel like this is going to be a weird game in general. I think because I know the Orlando Storm has kept it close with a good amount of their opponents this year, so it's not like this is going to be a cakewalk for the Orlando Storm. This is not going to be a cakewalk for the Orlando Storm. So I'm still picking the Storm, but it is going to be. I think this is going to be still a pretty close game than probably what people are might expecting from them. Then on Saturday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, we got the Birmingham Stallions traveling to Columbus to play the Aviators once again. And I mean, it was a very defensive performance last week for both, like a very defensive performance last week for both teams. But Birmingham got the win, 14-3, and I think we're expecting probably another tough game as well. Birmingham is trying to win to stay a lot to keep their grounds in the playoff race. Columbus. Although they're still alive in the playoff race, but they have a very tough road ahead. But I think they still would like to. They would still like to try to win this game because of course, I also side note before I keep continuing. Sorry if I. It is still impressive that all 8 teams in Week 9 are still in the playoff race. Last year or when the UFL started, like I have never actually when the UFL started, like it pretty much it took 7 weeks to get all the 4 teams available. It was just at that point the last 3 weeks were pretty much just determining the seeding. Then the following year, it pretty much just took until week 8. That was just more because Michigan just had to beat Houston to get the second to pretty much get the second spot in the USFL conference. But man, now we're in week 9, and I think this is probably one of the benefits as to why not having conferences or divisions this year does benefit, because at least we see a more open playoff race. St. Louis can still get eliminated. DC can still get eliminated from the playoffs. Birmingham, Louisville are fighting for the 2 playoff spots right now. So this one's going to be a very tight race probably till the end, unless a lot of things can happen, which Birmingham can technically make the playoffs this week. I guess, in fact, with this will also align with St. Louis in a short bit, but yeah, this is going to be a very this playoff race is going to be a entertaining one to say the least. I have never seen this competition since the USFL in 2023 when we saw never started seeing this much competition since the USFL in 2023 when we had the entire USFL North basically fighting for either they will get the 2 playoff spots or they will get the bottom 2 picks in the draft, which that was insane. Obviously went to Pittsburgh and Michigan for the playoffs for those 2 playoff spots, and then of course Memphis, despite being virtually out of the playoffs, they were still going to fight to the end, but obviously that didn't happen. They got destroyed by the Birmingham Stallions. But yeah, that was an interesting time. Now here we are. If we're going if we had the divisions based on the USFL conference, based on the rebranded teams, obviously you would have Orlando as the first spot, St. Louis as the second spot, DC as third place because they were also the USFL conference, and then Renegades last, and then you would have Birmingham as first. Louisville would have been the second playoff seed, but you would still have the Gamblers and the Aviators in the bottom 2, and still technically would have been alive for the playoff race, probably in a lot more if we were going with conferences like the USFL and the XFL. But anyways, back to Aviators, Stallions. Stallions can actually clinch the playoff spots this week, and this would eliminate both the Louisville Kings, the Dallas Renegades, the Houston Gamblers, and the Aviators in the process. So, but here it is. So Birmingham, obviously, they would need to win. Then they would need the Dallas Renegades to win this week versus Louisville because Birmingham has both the tiebreaker, the head-to-head tiebreaker with both Dallas and Louisville in play. So that means Stallions would get themselves the playoff spot even with having 5 wins and Louisville having 5 losses. And not only that, the final thing would be that the Houston Gamblers would also have to lose. So pretty much Birmingham win, Louisville loss, Houston loss, and the final one, I forgot this one, the DC Defenders would have to win this game. So Orlando lost because DC would get a playoff spot, because if DC wins, they get a playoff spot. So that actually benefits Birmingham for one of the final two spots. St. Louis, they win, plus a Louisville loss would also get them to the playoffs as well. So that will get to the playoffs as well for them this weekend. But Birmingham would need in the entire. We basically have to watch all these 4 games to see if they make the playoffs this week. Of course, it starts on Friday. If Orlando wins, then Birmingham has to wait till one more. Birmingham will have to wait one more week, despite the Louisville and Dallas game. So there is that. Uh, but I am picking the Stallions to win this game. I know Columbus has been the last. I mean, I know when they played Dallas and Houston twice this year. I know in the second matchup, Columbus tends to get the win the second time around, but it's kind of weird. I mean, this is probably not going to be a cakewalk for Birmingham. I'm not saying that at all, but this is something to look at this this weekend. But in that, I am picking the Stallions to win this game. Louisville, Dallas. Dallas, you are now on the brink of elimination. If Birmingham wins and Louisville wins, you are basically out of the playoffs. You are out of the playoffs. I mean, I think if you lose in general this week, if you lose this weekend, you're out of the playoffs. This week and this game's on Sunday at 1 p.m. This game's a 1 p.m. Pacific game, so 4 p.m. Eastern game. This is a 4 p.m. Eastern game, so this is a game to look at. If you guys lose this weekend, Dallas is out of the playoffs. Louisville, and it will be pretty much the race would be between Louisville, Birmingham, possibly Birmingham, and we'll see how the Gamblers game would go right after. But you guys are pretty much in hot fire. But you would also need a root for if the Aviators lose, I think actually Dallas might be out of the playoff race if the Aviators lose as well, because if the Aviators lose this weekend, Dallas is pretty much out of the playoff race. Even if they do beat Dallas will be eliminated this weekend if the Aviators lose. But we shall see how that goes. But with that, I'm going to pick the Louisville Kings. They've been hot. They've been more hot than the Dallas Renegades right now. And I feel like I got to keep the streak going. But I think Louisville's going to win this game. Then the final game of the season, you will have the St. Louis Battlehawks taking on the Houston Gamblers. And Houston pulled off a very big upset that kind of shut down St. Louis's clinching abilities. But they at least still have a shot this weekend for if you are St. Louis. St. Louis would either need a win, and either they would need a DC loss, or a Birmingham loss, or a Louisville loss. They would need one of those 3 teams to lose, and they are one of these 3 teams. Doesn't matter who, and they are in the playoffs. So I feel like that is a much easier path than what Birmingham has to do for this week. But anyways, I am gonna pick the Battlehawks. I don't think the Gamblers sweep. If they do, that would be very insane. And the Gamblers probably would have a huge shot to make the postseason. And I think they would probably even have a decent chance to be the 3rd seed, or I guess the last playoff spot. But I am not rooting for that, so give me the Battlehawks. I think they're going to split the series. I doubt they're going to make the same mistakes. And if Sal Cannella becomes very impactful early on, somehow becomes fairly impactful after a few days of practice, then I think the Battlehawks are pretty much going to be set this week. So give me the Battlehawks for the win. So my picks this week: Orlando, Birmingham, Louisville, and St. Louis. But yeah, that is my show for this week. I hope you all have a safe weekend. Stay safe, and peace out.